Thanks, Peter, for that update. There's no question that the metro and the network are arguably the biggest enablers of an urban renewal and economic activity in the city. And to unpack some of that detail that Peter's shared with us, I've got a esteemed panel up next, comprising of Elizabeth Dibbs, the District Commissioner for Western Sydney Greater Sydney Commission, Scott MacKillop, Chief Corporate Officer for Western Sydney Airport, Anita Mitchell, CEO of Placemaking New South Wales and Sydney Olympic Park Authority, and Brett Newman, CEO of City of Parramatta. Welcome to the stage. Glad I don't have to stand next to Scott for too long. Guys, we heard a lot there about renewal and throughout the day around economic and social opportunity some of these projects can catalyse. Started with all of you and just understanding and recognising your own unique perspective on Metro and the areas that you operate within. What do you see as sort of the number one benefit or outcome that you're looking for both Metro West and the North-South Metro Airport Rail? Liz, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. Look, for the Parkland City where I work, the Western Parkland City, it's a complete game changer to have the Metro going from the Aerotropolis to the airport through to St Mary's and, as Peter said, ultimately further south and further north. So what that really does, it provides the spine not only for greenfields development to a top-class standard, but urban renewal in places like St Mary's. And it really allows us to connect communities to jobs, to education, to other great places. And really that will accelerate and, in my opinion, leapfrog the Western Parkland City ahead to achieve our vision for the communities of Western Sydney. It's very exciting.
Scott, you'd probably share a similar view?
Yeah, Adam, so from Western Sydney Airport's point of view, ground connectivity and rail and metro specifically are about two things. One, it's about getting workers to the jobs boom that will happen at the airport and around the airport. I think we've heard a lot today that's really backed in the role of the airport as a catalyst for job creation in the region, and so those ground connections are so important for us to help people access those opportunities. And second, of course, we're an airport, and so we would like as many people as possible to be able to come and easily catch a plane. We are going to have a real point of difference at Western Sydney International around customer experience. I think you heard Simon touch on it earlier. Fast, easy and seamless is what we want passengers to say when they talk about flying from Western Sydney Airport. It's what we want airlines and air cargo operators to say, and that begins with access and getting there. And I think the Metro network has a lot of sort of customer value proposition synergies with what we're wanting to offer at the airport in terms of its real focus on customer experience that works up really well as a transport mode for the airport.
Indeed. Anita, on the other side of town, over at Sydney Olympic Park, we've got Metro West work beginning shortly, and we saw some great pictures there, concepts of what future of the precinct might look like. What are some of the benefits and things you're looking forward to with Sydney Metro West?
Well, given that we've got the graveyard shift, I might actually get a bit of audience participation and ask people to put their hands up if you came here by public transport. Last time I will. Yeah, was that a seamless and easy experience? If it was, please keep your hand up. Oh, great. So there's a couple of exceptions, but that gives you an indication of the constraints around Sydney Olympic Park. Government's lack of investment in permanent rapid transport has always made Sydney Olympic Park a bit of an island, and there's many people, including Brett, as predecessors, who've tried to unlock the future development potential, and I think there are a few things that Sydney Olympic Park does really well. We do sports and events, better than anybody else. We do parklands and being the backyard for the people of Sydney in an increasingly densified location extremely well, but what we don't do is have easy, rapid transport, and that's always constrained redevelopment opportunities. Mirvac's investment in build to rent out here has been another game changer, but we do hear from the residents that transport and connectivity is a constraint. We hear that from our commercial office tenants as well. We enjoy an enviable less than 2% vacancy rate when the rest of the CBD is around about 10%, but we'd like to see that increase. We'd like to see more investment. I've got a lot of paving, but not a lot of activation. So what I want is people on the streets. I want us to feel like an activated suburb. I want it to feel like a real city, a real central business district, and that's what Metro will bring to this site.
Speaking of activity, there's certainly a lot happening in Parramatta at the moment. That's without a metro. What do you see the city in 10 years' time once that metro's up and running?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Just picking up on Anita's comments, I think she's absolutely right in relation to the Sydney Olympic Park Peninsula. The single biggest issue that we get from residents is lack of transport, so you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. Look, I reckon you've got a lot of friendly competition up here on the table, because what I'm going to do is take all of the people from the Western City and all of the people from the Airtropolis and all of the people from Sydney Olympic Park and bring them to Parramatta on the metro.
Right.
But
I'll pinch them back from my parklands.
They can go and sleep there, that's okay. And exercise there.
Good luck, Brett.
And go out there. Actually, you've got a pretty attractive proposition now, I think about
This
it.
is pretty tough, Brett. You might have a fight on your hands, mate.
Yeah. I'm moving up here, Brett. I'm moving up.
Glad I found myself on the graveyard.
Can I finish, please? When I think about the metro, it's great to hear Peter. He thinks about trains. I think about people. And when I think about people coming to the city to help us genuinely build Sydney's CBD in the central city and really allow people to access our competitive advantages in health, education and innovation.
I'm going to maintain that competitive spirit, Brett, with this next question, and it's one that we often hear and one that obviously I think requires people to I compare it to having to choose your favourite child. It's not easy, but some cases it's easier than others. What comes next in the Metro network? Peter put forward a few options. Future transport strategy outlined probably not a case of if but when. In terms of prioritising the next stages, what do you all guys see in terms of what is the best option for Sydney and Western Sydney moving forward? Is it north to connect to St Mary's to Tallawong? Is it down south through to Macarthur? Is it connecting to the Leppington Link like Christopher mentioned earlier? Is it connecting from Bankstown through to Liverpool? There's a range of options there. What do we do next? Brett, I'll start with you.
Excellent, thank you, Adam. Look, I think the former Transport Minister said it best, right? He's the man who should know. I think the north-south linking Newcastle, Parramatta and the Shire and the Illawarra is critical. And secondly, I would say getting people from the airport to the central city and to the CBD in Parramatta is the second priority.
And we heard a bit about that, the line from Epping down through Parramatta down through to Hurstville. One that we've obviously put a lot of work into as well, but acknowledging there's a fair bit of interest in that one. On the other side, Liz, as District Commissioner for the Western Parkland City, what's your take on this?
Yeah. Look, I think a healthy competition is good, but I think at the end of the day we're all citizens and we're Sydney dwellers. We want the best for the city. So I think we've got to understand this in the context of what we're seeking to achieve. A really activated 24/7 airport with what will be a world-class aerotropolis at Bradfield, genuine R&D in advanced manufacturing, defence, agribusiness, freight and logistics, building on the already very strong economies of Penrith, Liverpool, Campbelltown, and all of the assets they already have there. In the central city, you've got an extraordinary centre in Parramatta, and with Westmead and supercharging that precinct of Westmead, and of course in the east we have Tech Central and so on. So this is honestly a joint effort to really elevate the incredible strengths that we have in Sydney, rebalance this city. So in terms of priorities, wow, I mean, let's do it all, but of course as District Commissioner for the West, to accelerate that. I love the idea of the rail extending through to Tallawong, but it's absolutely critical, and I think many people in this room will know, we have a lot of growth in the southwest. We've built the southwest growth area. We've got a wonderful community in Campbelltown through to Macarthur, with the talk around the Illawarra and so on. I think it's critical that we connect those communities. We can't honestly keep building very significant communities without providing proper public transport connections. So it's all important. How we slice and dice that obviously is tricky, but there are some priorities there from me.
The staging is going to be the tricky one, you're right. Scott, the airport have a view on what it'd like to see in terms of next stages for Metro?
Yeah, and it actually involves more train lines to the airport, actually, which you'd be surprised to hear.
Very surprising.
Minister Fletcher was correct earlier when he said we are building Western Sydney's first airport, but actually, looking to the medium and long-term view, we're building what will become the biggest global gateway to Australia, and we're building it here in Western Sydney. And the Sydney Metro Western Sydney Airport was an excellent first step. It was, as much as we've discussed today, a visionary piece of city building infrastructure as a transport solution. I think that there is an obvious task now to sort of finish that city connecting proposition, and Campbelltown, Macarthur, Wallandilly are calling for stronger connections to the airport, and from the connecting Western Sydney with the airport first, that makes sense. There's a couple of ways that you could achieve that connection, and then we've got to look outward, and we've got to realise that what we are actually building is an airport that towards the end of the 2030s is going to become Sydney's primary airport. So we need to connect it with the rest of the city to realise the incredible untapped potential that's going to be there. And so, of course, that means north to Tallawong Schofields. That means the Metro West connection to Parramatta and Westmead and Sydney Olympic Park. And then, of course, there's that little distance between Bradfield and Leppington, which just looks so obviously short on a map that you've got to do something about that.
Coloured in, don't you?
Yeah, there are, and of course, that kind of connection would mean incredible things would achieve the Southwest connection. You're right, Liz. Would achieve Liverpool. Would sort of achieve an interim Parramatta before Metro West is constructed. So there are a lot of options for what could be next for Metro. A lot of options for what could be next for the airports. Rail. I just think it's really important we have a considered discussion. And we get it right, and we realise that this airport is actually a legacy piece for the entire region for generations to come, and we kind of think that way as we plan the next steps.
All right. Anita, you got a take?
Look, if I was standing in a buffet and I'd already had Metro put on my plate, as I have, my next option would be Parramatta Light Rail Stage 2. What we know is that light rail is such a great connector and reduces car dependency as an intra-city solution. What's happened, for example, in Newcastle with the Honeysuckle redevelopment there, the turn-up-and-go nature of both a metro combined with light rail would also unlock the whole of GPOP and the peninsula. So I think that's super important for Sydney Olympic Park and its future. But I'd like to echo the comments that this has to be a network, because what we're trying to do is improve social equity, reduce car dependency, and make sure that we're a hyper-connected modern city. I've had the benefit of working all over the world on some of the world's largest urban regeneration projects. The thing that unlocks all of them is transport and connectivity. There's not one of them that's successful. If you go to Asia, they build the metro line before and the station box before you actually put any development over the top. London's retrofitted an enormous amount, and you can live in those cities very comfortably, very equitably without a car. And I grew up in Western Sydney and Liverpool, where it was very much like the castle. You had to move the Cortina to get to the Tirana to get to the Commodore, right? Everybody had to have a car. that is an incredibly expensive impost on people of Western Sydney, and we also know that they are wasting an enormous amount of their lives sitting in transport. There's 300,000 people who spend 45 minutes or more in a car every day, and they're Western Sydney people trying to get to work and back. That's not good enough when an hour and a half of your day is wasted in commuting time in a car that's expensive, not to mention tolls and all the other things. So, yeah, I might complain about spending $6 on a ferry ride. That's nothing compared to what some people in Western Sydney spend in terms of the amount of money that they spend on transport, and that's not equitable and it's not fair.
Yeah, putting transport first when it comes to land use.
Anita just agreed with Scott and me. Thank you.
Sorry?
I think he just agreed with it.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Anita, and I think putting transport at the forefront of our planning when it comes to our cities is a sound concept and one that we're seeing more of. Just noticing the time, I'm going to wrap up with one that I suppose we can't ignore is obviously the pandemic's taught us a few things and changed a few things, both in terms of planning, in terms of population, in terms of movement, in terms of work. Is the impact and looking, Scott, you mentioned longer term, if we're looking in 15, 20 years and we're talking about metro as a form of mode of movement, is it still going to be fit for purpose given the sort of localised trends that we're seeing now, or is this just a moment in time and keep focusing on sort of those sort of metro type projects? What do you see the future when it comes to movement and transport, especially around our major cities? Liz?
Look, I think a fast transit network like a metro is always going to be critically important. It's important in every global city. Sydney is a major global city, and so we need to aspire to that. But what will also be critically important if we're to rebalance Sydney are all the connections around those spines, the active transport, the placemaking, the connectivity to other suburbs, also getting better density for people to live in affordable and very, very high quality housing around these stations. That's going to be critically important. Our links to Newcastle and Wollongong will be very important, as the Premier said, port to port, airport to airport. That's going to be important. We really need to be a city that can, a connected metropolis of 3 cities, but then 6 cities. And I would add, it's come up today, we cannot ignore digital connectivity. I think that's been massively highlighted through COVID. That's going to be very important to get that right and equitable, because we don't want that to be the next cause of divide in our cities. And we also need to get our freight connections right. E-commerce is here to stay. So all of those things have to work on our network, both digital, freight, moving people, but placemaking as we do it, and leveraging these amazing public investments that we're making for that social, economic and environmental good.
Brett?
I'll take a slightly different approach and say that metro will only be relevant today and remain relevant for 15 years if we get the strategic land use decisions right today. And those strategic land use decisions need to be not only in relation to metro and metro railway stations and over the station developments. We must be thinking strategically about those precincts which are connected to the metro. So, for example, if we get land use decisions right in Westmead Innovation District, North Parramatta, Camellia, Sydney Olympic Park, and the other precincts that connect to and rely on metro right, and we have long-term land use for them, then metro will continue to remain relevant and valuable for our communities. If we get it wrong, we'll lose the value. So, for example, if we let residential be a land use in some of those precincts, and if some of those sites are sold as strata units, they will be lost forever. So it's those really important strategic land use decisions on connected precincts that are critical today.
Anita, you share that view? Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and I think it's something that we need to
Probably slightly controversially, probably don't share the view about strata residential, but that's because we develop land. That's kind of my mandate. So Placemaking New South Wales was brought together to bring the old Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority lands with Sydney Olympic Park and a number of different development projects up in the Hunter and Central Coast through Hunter and Central Coast Development Corporation. So for me, the only precincts that work are mixed use. We have the benefit of working with Peter and his team on Sydney Olympic Park, Pyrmont and Bays. Enormous potential brought about by the opportunity that Metro brings. If you think about Sydney Olympic Park, we've had, some good development. The fact that we had, Commonwealth Bank move out here, then sort of retreat. We've tried it a few times and it's always problematic because we don't have a real rail connection. That's always going to be a constraint. So obviously trying to get the right mixed use opportunity, Barangaroo is a great example of, I worked on it for 10 years. It was the dead end of the city. Nobody wanted to develop there. It wasn't connected. And it really took government and the development community to come together with a project development agreement that said we're going to punch a hole through and actually make a Wynyard Walk connection, invest in new ferry terminals, and now it's one of the most cracking areas of the city that everybody wants to live, work and play in. So, and I think, the pivoting from that being potentially just a commercial office development to a residential sort of community adds that 24-hour activation. So, we can debate governance models around strata versus build to rent versus everything else. I think from my mind, having mixed use developments around these things are the only precincts that I've ever seen work globally.
Scott, I'm going to give you the last word, noting that we've got 5 seconds left. You can have a little bit longer, but on the topic of the pandemic, and obviously there's not probably been one bigger industry that's been affected than aviation, but looking ahead, what are some of the things that you guys are looking for in terms of future transport connections and responding to what may be sort of a bit of a lag when it comes to the pandemic?
Yeah, so look, aviation always bounces back, and it's already proving itself as bouncing back from COVID-19. Aviation has a big, bright, sustainable future. So in the US alone this year, we've seen I think almost 70% of 2019 aviation traffic. Pent-up demand that Qantas is seeing is causing them to bring their A380 super jumbos back early. I think the International Air Transport Association predicts that we'll be back to 2019 flight levels by the end of 2024. I think that's probably a bit conservative now that that vaccines are rolling out across the first world. So the case for aviation demand that kind of was one of the reasons that Western Sydney Airport was developed is as strong as ever. It's actually probably stronger than ever. I think that Western Sydney International is going to open in the next golden age of aviation, really. And so we need to be able to get people to the airport in an efficient, sustainable way, and we need to be thinking forward, and we are already at the airport, about not just EV and electrification, but changes in vehicle ownerships. Hell, we're even thinking about where are we going to put the flying taxis. So that's where we're at with it.
I think you missed the word effortless, was the other one that Simon used. Pretty lively for a graveyard shift, guys. Thank you very much for the time today. Guys, please welcome our panel.